Alright folks, welcome back to the Don's channel. I am the Don Father and I came across this video from Infographics and I thought, this sounds interesting. And I have a bit of experience in the defensive side of stuff when it comes to exercise. We've done a lot of international stuff. I was demonstration battalion in England where we defended against we defended against each other first and foremost, different regiments within the British Army. We brought in the Air Force side of things, naval side of things as well, and put that all into the sort of defensive training exercises with this TES kit. So if you're shot with a rifle, a laser comes from that rifle, basically like Laser Quest but outside and military style. It'll let you know if your vehicle's been hit, if you've individually been hit as an individual soldier, etc. And this video is called, Could the US Defend from an Invasion of the Homeland? Well, we would have been fighting one company or one platoon defending an area, and like a battalion would have to try and come through and attack that and take this defensive position, whether it be an urban terrain or urban built up area, or a defensive sort of area outside. And let me tell you, no exception of your nationality, any country trying to attack always had to be re-energised, like full battalion, maybe 2 or 3 times before they could even come close to taking that position. That's how hard it is to attack a defensive position regardless. The US were the same. They tried to attack us and they had to be re-energised. A full battalion of them had to be re-energised 2 or 3 times. That's been brought back to life. Their vehicles were all KIA, flashing lights, and had to be put back into the battle. You get a wee gun and it energises them and they're good to go again. They had to do that 2 or 3 times and simply couldn't take the position. That's how hard it is. So now what you're talking about is the most powerful nation on God's green earth, the United States of America. Could they defend from an invasion? An invasion would be boots on ground. If anyone can even get boots onto US soil, I would be surprised. But let's say, for example, they could. It wouldn't take long before the US would wipe them off the face of the earth. But let's see what this video has to offer. No more talking. Let's go.
It's the early 1980s, and over the sky of the American heartland, Soviet and Cuban paratroopers begin to fall from the sky. In minutes, thousands of communist invaders have gained a foothold in the very heart of America. With World War III in full swing, it's up to a band of plucky teenagers to fight a guerrilla war against the godless commies. If you grew up in the 80s or just plain don't have bad taste in movies, then you're well aware of the action hit Red Dawn, a film that portrays a Soviet invasion of the United States toward the end of the Cold War. No, we're not talking about the remake. We don't speak of the remake. But film aside, could it really happen? That question was asked by Infographics show fan Blazik, who wanted to know if someone were to invade America, could the US pull all its forces home and hold out against a foreign invader? Despite what fiction like Red Dawn would have you believe.
At this point, the question's been asked, and I don't want to interfere with the video too much here, but the question's been asked, could they pull all their forces back to defend? Well, that is first and foremost what they would do. Remember, the US is well capable of defending its own country and also going on the offensive as well. They've got the best equipment, one of the biggest militaries on the planet, and not to mention, what is it, like 400 million or so personal weapons owned by civilians as well. So even the civilians you've got to take into account who would defend their house, defend their property first and foremost, and their family, and also the communities out with that. So you've got that element to think of as well if anybody is to set foot on it. But yes, all US forces would be primarily brought in to defend the US shores.
The United States was never in any danger of an invasion by the Soviet Union, mostly because the Russian people were about as interested in invading the US as Americans were in invading the Soviet Union. Of course, that didn't stop politicians and military officials on both sides using the fear of an evil capitalist or communist invasion from ballooning defense budgets. The saddest fact of the Cold War just might be that despite all the preparations to defend from an invasion by both sides, neither NATO nor the Soviet bloc ever had a single war plan drawn up for an actual preemptive invasion of the other's territory. But another major reason why the US was never under any threat of an invasion is due to its unique place in the world geography. In order for an enemy to get to America, first it must cross two massive oceans, and this geographic fact makes the United States the single most secure nation on Earth. Even today, moving troops and equipment across the oceans is a massive undertaking in terms of both logistics and cost, and very few nations are even capable of attempting the feat. But,
well, stopping it here purely because of what I've witnessed with my own eyes in terms of United States logistics, travelling from the United States of America to the Middle East, I have seen, simply put, the most unrivaled military logistics capabilities on planet Earth. Nothing comes close to United States logistics, and they've done it in real time. They've done it in conflict, they've done it in war, and as I say, nothing comes even remotely close to them. So for anybody invading the United States, they have to take this into consideration when they're trying to move from, in this case, the Soviet, from Europe all the way across the Atlantic, or the other way around, of course, and through Alaska or through the northwest part of the United States or down through Canada, who aren't going to let them do that easily. Let's be honest here.
let's say that the two leading peer competitors to the US decided to join forces and team up against the United States. With all troops returned home from overseas, could the US defend itself against a double-sided assault against it by China and Russia? First, the two-power alliance would have to decide on where to strike. For an invasion to be successful, both nations would have to land troops as quickly as possible, and that would require the use of a working seaport. These ports would require good rail and road infrastructure, and must have deep water anchorages so that large cargo ships could dock and disgorge troops and heavy equipment. The need to take and hold major seaports is critical, as aside from a few token forces with a small number of fire support platforms, amphibious landings alone wouldn't be able to deliver firepower fast enough to secure a beachhead. In Normandy during World War II, the success of the landings was largely down to a brilliant deception played out by the Allies, which saw the Nazis concentrate their forces at the wrong landing site. And even when the real landings happened 100 miles away, Nazi commanders were so fooled by Allied intelligence that they ordered their forces to hold their positions, believing that the real assault was coming their way any day. The ruse, combined with some whopping tactical blunders by Hitler, allowed the Allies to quickly build a makeshift port facility which let Allied armor and artillery disembark. Had Hitler allowed his commanders to commit panzer reinforcements to the landings, Normandy would have likely ended as a complete catastrophe for the Allies. By the time he cleared reserve panzer units for the assault on the beachheads, Allied logistical units had already disembarked enough tanks to repel the assault. In an invasion.
So at this point, it took the incredible art of deception to even achieve this, to allow things as tanks, artillery vehicles, to be able to go on through a port and into France. So they would have to be able to pull off, let's face it, in the modern world, the most incredible art of deception ever. I don't think many countries are going to fall for something like that anymore, because they've witnessed something as epic as that, the D-Day landings. So you've got to take history into consideration when you're thinking of that. So where do you get in? Let's see what the video has to say about it.
Of the US homeland, such a ruse would be impossible to pull off. Long-range and satellite surveillance assets would see an invasion fleet days before it made landfall, and its target would be clearly known to the American defenders. Therefore, China and Russia would have to act quickly and decisively, taking major seaports and holding them long enough to disembark a sizable expeditionary force able to repel American counter-assaults. For China, the only good options for unloading main battle tanks and mechanized artillery would be the ports in LA, Long Beach, Oakland, Tacoma, and Seattle. The LA Long Beach complex would be especially attractive as it's one of the world's largest ports and would allow Chinese forces to disembark very quickly. Unfortunately, these port facilities are also very close to several American air and naval bases, making them easily defended. The Seattle and Tacoma ports, however, are far more vulnerable, as only 5 major American bases are near these facilities. Landing in Washington, though, would mean Chinese forces would have to fight south and into California through easily defended and very mountainous terrain, a tactical nightmare for any.
So at this point, I'm stopping you again. You've got NATO to take into consideration. This video says, what if Russia and China got together? That's okay, because what if America used NATO? Which they would do. The British would not let anybody come across that Atlantic without raining hellfire on them if they knew they were going to attack their closest ally on the earth, which is the United States of America. You would have Australia on the Pacific and New Zealand willing to defend America from that side. So China's not getting across the Pacific as easily as they would like. You would have Japan helping them, South Korea helping them. So in this respect, where they've conveniently teamed Russia and China up, well, the clear thing would be here to me that the NATO countries and Europe, France, Germany, all the countries in Europe that would see their allies, the United States of America, as an important thing to protect, and they would be right in on it as well. So there'd be no clear passage across the Atlantic before they'd even got anywhere near Washington DC and the east coast of America. For me, it's never ever going to be able to happen unless you use nuclear, chemical, biological, or something of that ilk, or you're something from space.
Chinese commander. Russian invaders would face an even less enviable job. The American East Coast is home to far more numerous large port facilities, giving the Russian invasion force a greater number of targets to pick from. Unfortunately, the American East Coast is also the most heavily defended, with several dozen major military installations spread out from north to south. The East Coast is also home to America's largest military shipyards, which would be so heavily protected it would be suicidal to attempt a landing or assault against them. Russia's best bet would be to attempt a landing in Mobile, Alabama or Houston, Texas. This, however, would mean Russian forces would have to spend more time out at sea and move into the Gulf of Mexico, where they would be surrounded on all sides but the south by major American air bases. For both our challengers, the tactical picture is not looking very good, as the United States simply has no viable landing sites for a major expeditionary force that couldn't be easily defended. China and Russia could opt to coerce or bribe Mexico or Canada into allowing them to land at their facilities and launch an invasion into the US itself. This would be by far the best strategic option for the invasion forces, but in response to the agreement between either nation and the Sino-Russian alliance, the United States would immediately begin a large-scale bombing campaign against port facilities in Canada or Mexico, with every viable port being within easy reach of American bombers. Even before the invasion force crossed the ocean, they would be sailing for ports that have been turned into rubble. Assuming that the US didn't use naval aviation, which it definitely would, the invaders could opt for using ports in South America, well out of reach of most American bombers, and then simply move north to invade through Mexico. Moving through South America's poor rail and road infrastructure, though, would be a nightmare for the invaders, allowing plenty of time for the US to simply move blocking forces through Mexico to Panama and then hold off the invasion there. If, miraculously, though the alliance did manage to land forces in Canada or Mexico, it would face a different tactical nightmare altogether. In Canada, the lack of suitable border crossings would force the invaders to spread out over a large area, or bottleneck and be subjected to endless attacks by American air power. In Mexico, military border crossings would be possible over a far larger area, but enemy forces would be moving through terrain that provided absolutely no cover. American air power would once more devastate any invaders trying to move through the flat terrain of the US-Mexico border. Geography alone provides the United States with near invulnerability from enemy invasion, but the logistics of the world's militaries proves why the US simply cannot be invaded. An invasion of the American homeland would rely on naval power to get the job done. And right off the bat, no nation on Earth, nor any combination of nations, has the firepower and logistical support needed to carry out such an invasion. The matter is one of historical necessity for the world. Ever since the end of the Second World War, all of the world's major powers have had no need to project military power far from their own shores, except for the United States. The Soviet Union was chiefly concerned with securing its European borders, and in the case of a Third World War, its most vital strategic objectives could all be reached over land. The vitally important oil fields of the Middle East could all be taken via land routes through Afghanistan and Iran, and no navy was needed to hold off NATO forces in Europe. The same was true for Europe's NATO members. While once their mighty navies ruled the waves all over the world, their concerns in the 20th century quickly became resisting a possible Soviet invasion, and for that, no major naval power was needed. In the Atlantic, the Soviets hoped to slow the American response with the use of submarines, but ultimately knew that they could never stop the US Navy and thus never seriously tried. On the other side of the world, China struggles to turn itself into a first world power. And other than resentment towards Japan over its actions in World War II, China has had no real motivations to build a strong navy, at least until now. Much like the Soviet Union and Europe's NATO partners though, China definitely had no real reason to build a heavy sea lift capability in order to move thousands of troops and heavy equipment across the ocean. On the other hand, the United States is both blessed and cursed by geography. While it's untouchable to invasion thanks to the Atlantic and the Pacific, it also means that in order to project power on the world stage, America has always needed a strong navy. This is the reason that the US has always had a very strong naval tradition, and why it has invested in naval and air transport more than any other nation on Earth. If US troops want to get somewhere, after all, they're certainly not walking there. To even get forces into the US, any invading army is going to need some serious sea lift capability, and no force on Earth comes even close to the US's 125-vessel Military Sea Lift Command, which operates a vast fleet of oilers, tankers, and heavy cargo transports. Yet, even this fleet is not enough according to some analysts, and plans are being called for that include dramatically increasing the capability of the US's military transport fleets. China has in recent years expanded its landing ship capabilities, with several dozen available to carry troops and heavy equipment. These ships, though, are not meant for global operations and are only designed for cross-strait invasions into Taiwan or to ferry supplies to China's illegal holdings in the artificial islands it built across the South China Sea. A crippling lack of support vessels such as oilers means that China cannot physically get its landing ships across the Pacific, though even if this problem were to be solved, the nation cannot hope to make a contested landing on foreign soil. Again, this is because of China's lack of need for a global expeditionary military force. China's chief military concerns lie with a military invasion and forced repatriation of Taiwan, and thus it has not invested money into developing a true blue water navy. Russia has even less naval transport capability and support vessels, which again is a result of its military objectives being close to home. To compound the two nations' sea lift problems, both nations have no dedicated amphibious assault ships capable of providing close air support and air superiority to landing forces on a contested beach. By comparison, the US operates 9 of these specialized vehicles, and they will soon be equipped with the F-35 stealth fighter. Projecting air power is in fact the biggest weakness for any nation hoping to invade the US, and China and Russia combined only operate 2 active-duty aircraft carriers of extremely limited capabilities. Russia's infamous Admiral Kuznetsov very publicly had to be towed back to a friendly port after experiencing severe mechanical problems. Without adequate air power, neither nation could expect to secure a foothold on the US mainland. America's air forces are twice as large as both nations combined, and its naval aviation alone is as large as Russia's total air power. If by some miracle either nation could get troops across the ocean to US shores, the lack of air power would reduce the attempted landings to a suicide mission. In the end, not only could the US protect from an invasion of the homeland, but it is currently and for the foreseeable future completely invulnerable to military invasion. Luckily, the US, China, and Russia have no desire to fight each other, and there exists no real reason to. Now that you've made it to the end of the video, why not keep learning about cool, awesome stuff? Click on this video here, or maybe click this one instead. Either way, we guarantee you'll be entertained. You just can't lose.
Well, that's the end of the video, and my prediction would be, after watching that, but already what I know in terms of defending a position and trying to take a position, let alone a country, you need so much more firepower than to attack a position, a dug-in defensive position. You need so much more firepower than what is already there defending to be able to take that position, and they simply don't have the numbers, let alone in China's perspective the quality of aircraft, the quality of naval capabilities to be able to achieve such feat. That's not to say that they're terrible, it's just that they're untested, untrained. The quality isn't there, but the will and desire to be able to build it possibly is. However, America is in a league of its own against anybody who would like to try and attack and take America. I would predict that not a single boot would make it on American ground, and if they did, they would be dealt with swiftly, and that attack would be destroyed rapidly. So all in all, in my opinion, it is impossible, but obviously, for the purpose of that video, they knew Russia couldn't do it alone, China couldn't do it alone, so they teamed up on them. But I go back to my main point: how much more power in terms of allies does the United States have over Russia and China? And it is a ridiculous amount. I never even added India in there. India being a huge ally of the West, and they would be ready to defend against Chinese invasion anywhere. So would Japan, so would Australia, so would New Zealand, so would South Korea. All these countries who are close allies of the United States in and around that part of the world, and not to mention coming across the Atlantic, the European countries, and more importantly Canada on the northern side of America, which they added in, are not going to let anyone in easily into the United States of America. It wouldn't be in Mexico's interests either. They probably make more money of trade from the United States of America than any other country in the world, so economically they're not going to want to do that. And it just couldn't happen. It just couldn't happen. So I hope you've enjoyed the video anyway. I thought I'd share it because it just popped up. I've done a couple of infographics reactions. I've added a little bit of my own knowledge. What I would say is, however, to be able to set foot on American soil, you would need to use weapons that we do not want to be seen getting used on this earth, because it would be the end of humankind as we know it. Nobody wins that sort of war, but it would have to be nuclear, it would have to be biological and chemical, it would have to be something like that. We're using extreme cyber warfare tactics. Space has been militarised as now as well, so you would be using stuff like that, rockets from space, etc. And nobody wins those battles. Everybody loses at the end of the day. It's extreme mass loss of human life, and it is not wanted. No country on planet Earth in their right mind would want to see that happen. So the only way to do it would probably be to do that, and nobody wants to do it. There's no desire to do it, and as I say, nobody wins that one. Touch wood, no lunatic out there ever gets in a position where they do want to do it, and they do think it should be considered as an option, because it is not an option anybody in their right frame of mind would want. Anyway, thanks very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. The link to that one will be in the description section below. If you'd like to become a patron of the channel, please check out our Patreon account in the description section below, and follow the tiers on how to do that, on all the things that you could get from that, and there's also the option of joining the channel as a member. Hit join on this video or on the channel, and you can get personalised video requests and shout outs through that as well, so please check that out. Thanks very much for watching, everyone. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment and share, and put the bell on. I am the Dawn Father, and I'll see you all soon. Goodbye.